The morning sun streamed gently through the pale curtains of a modest yet charming apartment in suburban Atlanta. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, accompanied by the soft hum of birdsong just outside the window. In the kitchen, nestled within the heart of this quiet home, stood Aaliyah Bennett, a woman whose presence radiated both strength and serenity. 32 years old, with skin the color of warm bronze and eyes like old poetry, soft, searching, and filled with stories, Aaliyah lived a life built on calm routines, heartfelt intentions, and the belief that love, real love, was worth every ounce of effort. She adjusted the gold chain around her neck, a gift from her husband, Marcus, and smiled as she placed 2 plates of scrambled eggs and toast on the table. A nurse by profession, Aaliyah was known for her kindness and dedication, always willing to work the extra shift, always placing others before herself. But at home, with Marcus, she thought she had found a sanctuary, a place to rest her spirit. Marcus was everything she'd dreamed of in a partner: tall, charismatic, attentive in just the right ways. They'd met 3 years ago in the waiting room of Grady Memorial Hospital, where her exhausted shift collided with his mother's emergency visit. From that chaos bloomed something unexpected. He was smooth, charming, and seemingly uncomplicated. Within a year, they were married in an intimate ceremony under the flowering dogwoods, just as spring was giving way to summer. From the outside, their life was picture perfect. She had photos all over the apartment to prove it: vacations to Charleston, dinner parties with friends, weekend getaways in the Georgia mountains. And yet, beneath the curated calm of her world, a subtle ache sometimes pulsed quietly within her chest, a whisper that something wasn't quite right, a puzzle with a missing piece she couldn't identify. Marcus worked in logistics, often traveling for client meetings, sometimes gone for entire weekends. It was part of the job, he'd explained. At first, she hadn't questioned it. She trusted him. They'd built something solid, hadn't they? Aaliyah cleaned the kitchen meticulously that morning, even though she was already late for work. The nagging thought that had been crawling at the edges of her mind lately was back. Why did he always seem unreachable when he was away? Sure, he'd text her daily. Love you. Miss you already. Client dinners ran late, but there was a distance she couldn't explain. She never heard hotel noise in the background. She never saw receipts or business cards. He always deleted his call logs. She shook the feeling off and grabbed her bag. Today was her off day, but she'd volunteered to help with a community health screening event downtown. It was who she was, always helping, always giving, often without asking for much in return. Driving through the familiar streets of her neighborhood, she waved to Mrs. Carter, her elderly neighbor who always watered her plants in a pink robe and curlers. This was her world, her rhythm. Aaliyah wasn't extravagant. She didn't crave fame or riches. She wanted truth, stability, someone who wouldn't hide from her in plain sight. At the health fair, Aaliyah was in her element. She laughed with patients, guided them through screenings, handed out brochures on heart health. Life felt clear, purposeful. She glanced at her phone during lunch, half expecting a sweet message from Marcus. But there was nothing. A strange weight settled in her stomach. She brushed it off. It wasn't until later that something truly strange happened. Something small, but unsettling. She ran into a woman named Kendra at the registration table. Kendra had thick curly hair and wore a red hoodie with a faded college logo. She stared at Aaliyah for a long moment before softly saying, "You look familiar. Do you know a Marcus Reynolds?" Aaliyah blinked. "Yes, that's my husband." Kendra tilted her head, eyebrows drawn tight. "Husband?" The word hung in the air like smoke. Before Aaliyah could respond, one of the nurses called her away for a patient emergency. But the damage had been done. That single interaction, brief as it was, carved a small fracture in her day, a fracture that would soon split her life wide open. Driving home that evening, Aaliyah tried to rationalize it. Kendra must have been mistaken. Marcus was a common name. It couldn't possibly mean anything. And yet, the knot in her stomach tightened with every mile. When she walked through the front door that night, the apartment was quiet. Marcus wasn't due back until Sunday. She sank into the couch, phone in hand, staring at his most recent message. Flight was delayed. I'll call you in the morning. Love you. She stared at it longer than usual. Something in the phrasing felt generic. Like a template. Like he'd sent it to someone else before copying and pasting it to her. She clicked on his contact photo, one from their honeymoon in Barbados, both of them drenched from a sudden rainstorm, laughing under the blur of sunset. It felt distant now. Not fake, but far away. As though it had happened in a different lifetime, or maybe to someone else entirely.
She didn't sleep well that night.
Her dreams were filled with strange scenes. Marcus in a house she didn't recognize, holding a child she'd never seen. A woman standing behind him, smiling at Aaliyah with knowing eyes. The next morning, she found herself searching his desk drawers, something she'd never done before. Everything looked normal, organized,
Boring even.
until she found a receipt tucked inside an old journal. It was from a jewelry store in Decatur. The date was just 2 months ago. The name on the card read, "To my forever. Love, Marcus." But it wasn't her birthday, and she hadn't received any new jewelry. Aaliyah sat down slowly, journal still in her hand. Her heart thudded in her chest like a warning drum. Her world, so neatly folded and packaged, had just begun to unravel. The next few days felt like a strange kind of fog had descended over Aaliyah's life. She tried to shake off the feeling that something was wrong, but the universe had a way of pulling threads from the edges of her world, and with each passing day, the tapestry of her reality grew thinner and more unraveled. The receipt, the strange woman, the missing pieces of her husband's life that she had never questioned before, they all swirled in her mind like whispers, growing louder, demanding her attention. Aaliyah couldn't let go of the nagging thought that Marcus was hiding something from her. The small inconsistencies, the little details that didn't add up, were beginning to gnaw at her in a way she couldn't ignore any longer. She'd always trusted him implicitly. They'd built their relationship on trust, after all. She'd never once thought he might be hiding a whole other life, a life she knew nothing about. At work, Aaliyah tried to focus on her patients, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Marcus. She found herself staring at his picture on her phone, questioning how she could have been so blind. There had to be something more, something bigger that she hadn't seen. Her mind raced as she recalled the look on Kendra's face. It wasn't just curiosity. It was recognition. Recognition of someone who had known Marcus in a way she hadn't. Who was this woman? And why did she know Marcus so well? The questions bubbled in her mind, demanding answers. That evening, as Aaliyah sat on the couch with a cup of tea, she tried to push the unsettling thoughts away. But they wouldn't leave. She couldn't ignore them any longer. She had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The phone call from Marcus was late that night, just as he promised. "Hey, babe," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "How was your day?" Aaliyah tried to sound casual. "It was good. Just the usual. What about you? How's the trip?" Same old, Marcus replied, his tone light. "I'll be back in a couple of days. I miss you." She hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Who's Kendra?" There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. She could almost hear him scrambling for words, like a man caught off guard. "Kendra? Who? What do you mean?" Aaliyah's voice grew more urgent. "I ran into her at the health fair. She mentioned you. She seemed to know you." There was a long pause, too long. Marcus let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, Kendra.
She's just someone I worked with a while ago. Nothing to worry about, babe."
Just an old acquaintance. You know how it is." But Aaliyah wasn't convinced. There was something in his voice that didn't sit right. It wasn't the warmth she was used to hearing.
It was forced.
Too rehearsed. It was the kind of answer someone gives when they've been caught off guard, when they don't want to reveal the truth. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Are you sure?" Because it didn't seem like she was just an old acquaintance. "I'm sure, baby," Marcus said quickly, his voice too quick, too defensive. "Look, I've got to run. I'll call you in the morning, okay?" Before Aaliyah could respond, he hung up. She sat there for a long moment, the phone still pressed to her ear. The call had ended, but the silence in the room felt deafening. Her mind spun with the possibility that Marcus was lying to her. Why would he react like that unless there was something more? The next morning, Aaliyah couldn't shake the feeling that her marriage was built on a foundation of lies. She couldn't look at Marcus's photo on the wall without feeling a strange unease creeping into her chest. What if he had been hiding something for years? What if the man she thought she knew wasn't the man she had married at all? By the time the weekend came and Marcus returned, Aaliyah had made up her mind. She needed answers.
No more second-guessing.
No more pretending everything was fine. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Marcus walked through the door that Saturday afternoon, his usual smile stretched across his face. But today, Aaliyah saw it differently. She saw the way his eyes darted around the room, as if he were checking to see if she had found out something she shouldn't have. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the tightness in his jaw. He wasn't as calm as he usually was. There was something lurking beneath the surface. "Hey, babe," Marcus said, dropping his bag by the door and walking toward her. "How was your day?" Aaliyah stood there, holding her breath for a moment. Then, without warning, she asked, "Who is Kendra, Marcus?" His face went pale. The color drained from his cheeks, and for the first time in their relationship, Aaliyah saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. I told you. She's no one," he stammered, but Aaliyah could see the cracks in his story. The longer they stood in silence, the more she realized the truth was slipping out of his reach. Aaliyah's heart pounded in her chest. She had heard that stammer before. It was the kind of hesitation that always came before a lie fell apart. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "What's going on, Marcus? Who is she?" Marcus's eyes flickered with panic. He reached for her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. This wasn't the man she married. This wasn't the man she thought she knew. I can't explain it," Marcus said, his voice shaking now. "You don't understand. There's so much more, please, just let me explain." Aaliyah stood firm, her heart racing as she realized the gravity of what was happening.
No.
"I won't let you explain. I need the truth, Marcus. Now." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Aaliyah felt her world begin to crumble as she realized that the man she had married wasn't who he claimed to be. And the secret he had been hiding for so long was about to destroy everything. The silence between them was suffocating. Aaliyah stood in the living room, her hands trembling by her sides. The house felt cold now, colder than it had ever been before. Everything she had once trusted, every certainty she had clung to, was crumbling around her. The man she had loved, the man she had built her life with, was now a stranger standing before her, a liar hiding a secret that threatened to rip their world apart. Marcus shifted uneasily, his eyes darting toward the door as if searching for a way out. He had made a choice, but Aaliyah was beginning to realize that the consequences of his decisions were far greater than either of them could have imagined. I can't do this anymore, Marcus," Aaliyah said, her voice shaking but resolute. She had to make a decision, and she knew it was one she couldn't take lightly. "You've lied to me. For how long? Years? How long have you been hiding this other family from me?" "I never wanted to hurt you," Marcus pleaded, his voice cracking. He reached out for her, but Aaliyah instinctively stepped back, her eyes locked onto his with a mix of hurt and betrayal. The words stung. The lie he had lived for so long finally exposed. The air between them was thick with the weight of his unspoken truths. Aaliyah could feel her chest tighten with a mixture of rage, disbelief, and heartbreak. The life she had built, the future she had dreamed of, had it all been a lie? Was this marriage just a carefully constructed facade, a lie that had been painted so perfectly she had never even suspected the cracks beneath the surface? She shook her head, unable to reconcile the image of the loving husband she had once known with the man before her now. "I need space. I need to think." The words felt like a knife to her heart, but they were necessary. It was the only way to understand what had happened and what she needed to do next. She couldn't let him manipulate her with his guilt, with his excuses. This was about her now. It had to be. Marcus stood there, frozen, as she turned and walked toward their bedroom, her mind spinning with questions, doubts, and fears. She didn't know how she would confront him, but she knew one thing for certain. She needed answers. And she needed to understand the full scope of the situation before she could make any decisions. Once she was in the safety of their bedroom, Aaliyah sat down on the edge of the bed. Her hands were clammy, and her head buzzed with a million thoughts, all of them moving faster than she could process. How could he do this? The question reverberated in her mind, louder and louder until it felt like it was drowning her. The life she had thought she knew was built on a lie, and now she was left to pick up the pieces. She thought about the life they had shared, the quiet mornings, the dinners they had eaten together, the plans they had made for the future. It had all felt so real, so genuine. How could she have been so blind? But now, she had to face the truth. Marcus wasn't the man she thought he was. He had another life, another family, and Aaliyah had been nothing but a pawn in his carefully crafted game. She had been the dutiful wife, the perfect partner, all while he had been living a double life. How could she trust him again? How could she go on like this? The more she thought about it, the more she realized how deeply the betrayal cut. It wasn't just the lies, though that alone would have been enough. It was the fact that she had been deceived for so long. He had shared his life with someone else. He had given his love, his time, and his loyalty to another woman, while she had been kept in the dark. How could she forgive that? Aaliyah ran her fingers through her hair, trying to clear her thoughts, but they just kept coming, faster and faster. What should I do now? She couldn't just walk away.
Could she?
She had invested so much of herself into this relationship. Could she really throw it all away? But then, how could she stay? How could she ever trust him again after everything he had done? Her mind raced as the hours passed, her thoughts circling like a whirlpool, pulling her deeper into a sea of uncertainty. She couldn't talk to her friends. They would never understand. She couldn't confide in her family. They would tell her to leave him immediately, without hesitation. But Aaliyah knew it wasn't that simple. There was too much at stake. Finally, as the weight of the situation pressed down on her, Aaliyah knew what she had to do. She had to confront Marcus again. She couldn't just let him hide behind his lies. She needed the truth, the whole truth, no matter how much it hurt. She stood up from the bed, determination setting in. She had to take control. She had to face this head-on. No more hiding. No more pretending. When she re-entered the living room, Marcus was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up at her as she entered, his face pale, his expression filled with guilt and fear. "I need to know everything," Aaliyah said, her voice steady, despite the storm raging inside her. "I want the truth, Marcus. No more lies." His face crumpled as he nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll tell you everything. But please just understand, I never wanted this to happen." Aaliyah crossed her arms, steeling herself for the truth she was about to hear. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. Marcus took a deep breath, preparing himself for the revelation. Aaliyah didn't flinch, didn't look away. She was ready now. The air in the room grew thick with tension as Marcus sat across from Aaliyah, his eyes filled with regret, guilt, and fear. Aaliyah's heart was pounding in her chest, but she was resolute. She had to know everything, and she wasn't going to back down. "Tell me, Marcus," she demanded, her voice steady, though the storm inside her was fierce. "How long has it been going on? This other family, how long have you been lying to me?" Marcus swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if gathering the courage to speak. Aaliyah couldn't take her eyes off him. She wanted to see the truth in his face. Every word that came out of his mouth was another shard of the glass that was once their perfect life together. "It started 6 years ago," he said quietly. "I was traveling for work, and that's when I met Laura. She was beautiful, charming, and, well, it wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean for it to, but it did." He paused, his voice breaking. "I wasn't looking for another relationship, Aaliyah. But I found myself drawn to her in a way I couldn't explain. Things got messy fast. And before I knew it, I had two lives, one with you, the woman I loved, and the other with her. Aaliyah's hands trembled, but she gripped the back of the couch, forcing herself to remain composed. She couldn't let her emotions take over now, not when she was so close to the truth. "So you've been living a double life?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "You've been with her all this time? Behind my back? And you never thought to tell me? You never thought I had the right to know?" Marcus shook his head, his face filled with anguish. "I didn't want to hurt you, Aaliyah. I didn't want to lose you. I thought I could keep it under control, that it wouldn't affect our life. But I was wrong. I was selfish, and I made a huge mistake. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this." Aaliyah felt as though the room was closing in on her. She wanted to scream, to lash out at him for the betrayal, for the lies, but she kept her composure, focusing on his words. She needed to hear it all, to understand how this could have happened. "What does she know about me?" Aaliyah asked, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. "Does she know about me, Marcus? Does she know that I've been married to you, that we've built a life together?" Marcus hesitated, his eyes darting to the side, avoiding her gaze. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "She knows. But I told her that I wasn't happy in my marriage, that things were complicated. I told her that you didn't understand me the way she did. But it wasn't true, Aaliyah. I loved you, I still do. I never wanted to hurt you, but I was too weak to stop it." Aaliyah recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. "You told her you weren't happy?" she repeated, the words stinging like poison. "And you let her believe that? While you were with me, while I trusted you, you were telling her I didn't understand you." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to show any more weakness. The betrayal was deep, far deeper than she had imagined. It wasn't just about infidelity. It was about lies, manipulation, and the complete disregard for her feelings. "How many times," she demanded, her voice rising, "how many times did you see her? Did you spend time with her? Did you lie to my face while I was sleeping next to you, while I believed everything was fine?" Marcus looked down, unable to meet her eyes. His silence was deafening. "How many, Marcus?" she pressed, her voice shaking with rage. She needed to know, needed to understand how far this had gone. I don't know," he whispered, his voice breaking. "It wasn't always regular. I'd go on business trips, tell you I was working late, and spend weekends with her. I tried to keep it separate, but I was wrong. I was fooling myself, thinking I could have both." Aaliyah felt her world shatter with each word he spoke. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was the utter disregard for her, for their marriage, for everything they had built together. And now, everything was falling apart. "And now you expect me to just forgive you?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. "You think that after all of this, I'm supposed to understand? You think I can just accept that you've been lying to me for years?" "No, Aaliyah," Marcus said desperately, his voice rising with emotion. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to stay with me. I know I don't deserve that. But I need you to understand that it was never about you. It was about my own weakness, my own inability to face my own demons. And I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." Aaliyah stared at him, her heart torn between anger and sadness. The truth was too much to bear, but it was also something she needed. She had to know the full extent of the betrayal. She had to face the reality of what her marriage had become. "You've ruined everything," Aaliyah said quietly, the pain evident in her voice. "I don't even know who you are anymore." The words hung in the air between them like a suffocating weight. She couldn't look at him anymore. The man who had once been her world was now a stranger. The trust that had taken years to build was gone in an instant. Aaliyah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision before her. It wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about her. It was about reclaiming her life, her happiness, her future. The man she had loved had betrayed her in the worst way possible. And now, she had to decide what to do with the shattered pieces of her heart. "Get out," she said, her voice cold and final. Marcus stood there, his face contorted in grief, but Aaliyah was resolute. She couldn't live in this lie, any longer. She needed to move on. And for the first time in years, she knew that her decision was the right one. Marcus opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. He turned and left, leaving Aaliyah alone in the silence. The truth had been revealed, and now it was time for her to face the aftermath. The silence that followed Marcus's departure was deafening. Aaliyah stood there in the middle of their living room, the room that once felt like home, now empty and foreign. She took a slow, steady breath, the kind that felt like it was coming from a place deep inside her soul. There was a coldness in her chest, a numbness that she hadn't anticipated. The pain was still there, but now it was distant, as if it belonged to someone else. The door clicked shut behind him, but the echoes of his words remained. "I never wanted to hurt you." Aaliyah couldn't shake them. How could he say that? How could he claim that he never wanted to hurt her, yet every action had been one betrayal after another? She had trusted him, loved him unconditionally, and in return, he had taken that trust and shattered it into 1,000 pieces. Aaliyah walked over to the couch, her legs unsteady, and sat down. Her hands, once calm and composed, trembled as she folded them in her lap. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to be angry, but what was the point? She had no more tears left to shed, no more words to say. The truth had been laid bare, and now she was forced to face the wreckage of her marriage. But as the hours passed, something started to shift inside her. It was a slow, almost imperceptible change, but it was there. The anger began to fade, replaced by something else, something more powerful. Strength. Aaliyah had always prided herself on being strong, but now, for the first time, she felt the weight of that strength. The decision she had made, telling Marcus to leave, had been the hardest thing she had ever done. But it was also the only choice she could make. She could feel the walls she had built around herself solidifying, the walls she had erected to protect her heart from the truth. But the truth wasn't as terrifying as she had thought. It hurt, yes, but it also liberated her. Aaliyah stood up, walking to the window and gazing out at the city. The world seemed so vast, so full of possibilities. For the first time, she could see her future stretching out before her, not as a continuation of the life she had been living, but as a new beginning. She had been trapped in a prison of her own making, clinging to a life that had been built on lies. But now she was free. She reached for her phone, the weight of it heavy in her hand. For a moment, she hesitated, but then she pressed the number she knew by heart. It rang 3 times before someone picked up. Aaliyah? It was Erica, her best friend. Aaliyah could hear the concern in her voice. "I heard what happened. Are you okay?" Aaliyah let out a shaky breath, her throat tightening. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I was okay, but everything's just a mess right now." "I'm coming over," Erica said without hesitation. "You don't have to go through this alone." Aaliyah smiled faintly, the smallest flicker of warmth returning to her chest. "Thanks, Erica. I could really use you right now." She ended the call and sat back down, her mind racing. What now? She had no idea what her life would look like without Marcus. The life they had shared, the plans they had made, the dreams they had built together. It was all gone. But as painful as it was, she knew it was for the best. The front door opened minutes later, and Erica entered, her expression a mixture of concern and warmth. Without a word, she sat down beside Aaliyah, pulling her into a tight hug. Aaliyah didn't cry, but she allowed herself to lean into the comfort of her friend's embrace. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," Erica said softly. "You deserve so much more than this, Aaliyah." "I know," Aaliyah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'll be okay. I have to be." Erica pulled back slightly, her gaze searching Aaliyah's face. "What are you going to do now?" Aaliyah looked out the window again, the weight of the question sinking in. "I don't know yet. Guess. I need to find out who I am without him. Without that life. It's scary, but it's also kind of exciting, you know?" Erica nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "You've got this. You're stronger than you realize." The two women sat in silence for a while, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Aaliyah didn't have all the answers yet, but she could feel herself starting to heal, one small piece at a time. She had been broken, shattered, but now she was starting to rebuild herself, to find her own strength. Marcus had left, but so had her fear. She could finally breathe again. In the days that followed, Aaliyah took small steps toward reclaiming her life. She reached out to family members she hadn't spoken to in months. She began therapy, unsure of what she would uncover, but determined to face the truth, no matter how painful. She started to rediscover parts of herself that had been buried under the weight of her marriage, the independent, confident woman who had once chased her dreams fearlessly. The journey wasn't easy. There were nights when the loneliness crept in, when the silence felt unbearable. But there were also moments of clarity, moments when Aaliyah knew deep down that she was doing the right thing. She was letting go of the past, of the lies, and opening herself up to the possibility of a new future, one that was hers and hers alone. Months passed, and though the pain never fully disappeared, it became easier to live with. Aaliyah had learned to trust herself again, to believe that she deserved more than the life Marcus had given her. She wasn't the same woman who had once loved him blindly. She was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to create a life that reflected her true self. And as she stood at the threshold of a new chapter, Aaliyah knew that the most important lesson she had learned was this, that she had the power to heal, to move forward, and to become the woman she was always meant to be.